Satsang is where we get to come together, where we get to take some conscious time and be present to the full dimensionality of our being as human spiritual beings. We get to explore the fabric of reality that, for the most part, we're often forgetful of because we get so lost in the content of the experience, this fascinating life that we are blessed to live. We get lost in it, understandably. It's very much like falling asleep at night and drifting off in the dream. And we're lost in the dream. We have no knowing that there's a head laying on the pillow while we're in the dream. All there is the dream. But then, perhaps in lucid dreaming, we start to recognize that there is a dreamer. Oh, I am dreaming. And here's the dream, and I am the dreamer, dreaming the dream. And that is what enlightenment is, that is what awakening is to remember that we are more than just our own mind's projections of ideas and thoughts and beliefs and imaginings, conjectures, judgments, opinions, etc. That we're more than just this egoic experience of body and brilliant, beautiful mind and ego. And ego is simply the story we tell of ourselves. It is a construct. It is a made-up thing based on everything we've been told and have learned and chosen to believe about who we are, the individuality of self. And as a human being, we are individual expressions of a larger self, a soul that is even larger than that, a soulful expression of the one essence of being, the one consciousness that we all share. So satsang is the ability to come together and intentionally come to rest in the remembrance of our being, of our truth. So it's good to have you here. Good to have you here. Remember that there's the ability to chat into the satsang. If you are logged in through the Chrome browser, and I'll post, see if I can do this here. I'm new to some of this technology, but I'm going to see if I can post into the chat the invite. I think I can. Here we go. Audience, copy link. Haha, beautiful. So if you are, if perhaps you're on YouTube viewing this, if you want to participate and actually chime in with a question and engage in a little bit of actual dialogue beyond the chat, you can do that by following the link I just posted in the chat, and then using a Chrome browser, and then you can actually have some dialogue when we get to that part of the satsang. But mainly, I just want to say, just thank you for being here, for following your own soul's desire to know itself, to awaken to itself, to the full dimensionality of the miraculous essential being that we all are. So today, I'd like to explore with you just the question of why do we forget? Why do we forget who we are? And it's called getting lost in the content of experience. We get lost in our own mind's narrative about what is happening. And we think that whatever our mind is telling us is reality. And it's not. It's just our own mind's interpretation of a moment. And we know this because you could line up 5 individuals and they can each experience the exact same external condition, and each one of them is having a different experience. One of them is looking at the event that is unfolding, and it triggers a panic. It triggers an old wound of not feeling safe, perhaps, and so they're having that experience. Another person experiences the same or witnesses the same condition, situation, event. And within them, they see opportunity for growth, or compassion is triggered, or maybe a judgment is triggered, a harsh judgment. Maybe a sense of comparison is triggered. Oh, God, that person's doing awesome. Someday I'll be able to be as successful as they are, and then I'll be worthy of love. That's a dialogue that happens within this person, but not that person. So that is called getting lost in the content of the experience. We get lost in our own narrative. And largely, why do we do that? Because most are not well acquainted, if at all acquainted, with their essential nature of being. The self before thoughts, before judgments, before narrative. The self beyond thoughts, judgment, narrative. The essential piece of being. That we tend to tap into when we quiet the mind. Quiet the mind so the soul can speak. And when we quiet the mind, usually in meditation, when we are able to perhaps follow the breath, which is simply a tool of distracting the mind from itself, it gives us something else to pay attention to other than the narrative. When we attend to the breath, and consciously slow down, notice the pace of your breath. Notice the depth of your breath. Notice that you have a body. Like literally just notice, oh, I have a body. There's a presence here that isn't the thoughts. It's anything but the thoughts. We're just pointing the attention to anything but the narrative. And just notice, oh, I have a body. Maybe I can relax the shoulders of this body. Maybe I can soften the muscles around the eyes of this body. Let me notice the movement of the breath and what it feels like as it moves in and out of this body. What does it feel like when the chest rises and falls, when the belly extends and contracts? What does that feel like? And we simply notice that the simple act of dropping out of the mind a little bit, we start to find some sense of peace. And we recognize it's always there. It's actually always there. And then even when we find that and recognize that and abide that, accept that, we might notice the mind chimes in again. Wait, what's happening? What's happening? Ooh, what is this? How do I hold on to this? How do I make this stay? Is it going to stay tomorrow when I have to have that conversation with my boss about the project that I'm behind on? And the mind goes. And so we again just notice that and go, okay, now I'm starting to not feel the peace. I'm starting to feel the agitation of mind. And so let me stop again and bring my awareness into the body, into the breath, which is simply a tool of distraction from the habitual narration. And again, we might come to recognize there's some peace there. And to recognize again, it's always there. Because that is the essential nature of our being, that the narrative is typically clouding, veiling, covering up. I call it the noise of the mind. Can we learn to live beyond the noise of the mind? And recognize our essential piece of being. And a way to kind of grok this, understand this a little bit more, is to bring your awareness right now to, let's say, your left hand. Just bring your awareness to your left hand. You don't have to look at it. You don't have to see it. Just know. Just bring your awareness to the fact that you have a left hand. And recognize, you didn't just grow a left hand. It has been there all along. You simply brought your awareness to it. And that is what we do in meditation. We bring our awareness to that which always exists. Quiet the mind, open the heart, and then know the essential peace of being. It's interesting that we will say when somebody dies, rest in peace. Like finally, your mind stopped. That's basically what we're saying. Oh, all right, their mind stopped. Their activity of mind died. Now they can rest in peace. And the opportunity in this beautiful, precious life is to rest in peace, is to come to recognize that peace of being. So that we can have the full human experience from a rested state of peace. I am the peaceful witness. I am the essential nature of being that is always at peace, noticing my human experience. And especially noticing, and this is really where the attention and the study comes in, noticing the source of our discontent or anxiety or overwhelm, where we feel constricted, where we feel we are no longer at peace. To notice the source of what disturbs our peace. And what we will find, it is typically our mind's opinions and judgments and stories and ideas and assessments about life. And so it's important for us to know what's happening. Oh, a situation happened. What is happening? Why am I feeling such anxiety, fear, not feeling safe, afraid of this has to get solved? Until it's solved, I don't feel good. And to name what's happening. Oh, a situation has occurred and my mind is immediately churning up ideas and opinions and beliefs based on my programming, based on my conditioning, based on what society has taught me, what my own past has taught me, because I told stories about different events based on an ignorance and based on not knowing my true divinity and being lost in the sense of an individuated self. And I had these experiences, and the only self I knew was a small, egoic, threatened self. And therefore that started to generate stories and narratives around I'm not safe, and I'm not okay, and I'm not lovable, and I'm not worthy. So to notice what is causing any sense of anxiety and to be able to name it. Oh, wow. That's mind activity. That's my conditioning. Now, that's part of the naming, is to name that. And then to be able to name the awareness of that anxiety, of that activity. So to be able to recognize, oh, what is aware of this anxiety? What is aware of this arising of emotion and thought and feeling and conditioning and programming and triggered state? That is all happening within what? And it's awareness. And the awareness is not bothered by the activity. The awareness is not bothered by the activity. This is getting that distancing, that witnessing perspective. Who are you really? Are you your mind? Is that the sum total of you? Are you only your thoughts and beliefs and the emotions that are triggered by those thoughts and beliefs? Are you only this database of past and history and learning and programming and wounding? Is that the full extent of you? That's like getting lost in the dream at night and never knowing that there's a dreamer, never knowing that there is a head laying on the pillow. So, naming the anxiety, its source, what's it made up of? Wiring, reactions, neural firings, triggers, the mind saying, oh, this experience is happening. Let me take it into my database of all my programming and let my database tell me how I should feel. Well, you should feel afraid. Why? Because you're failing at something. And why should I be afraid of that? Because when you fail at things, people won't love you. Oh, and what happens then? Then there will be no love. You won't know love. This is all programming, conditioning, stories, learning. So that's part of the naming. And then the naming of, wait a minute. This is a transient experience. And what is aware of this transient experience? I am. The pure I that we all share. Before any descriptive, before any individual identity, I am. The words that are used from everything that wants to describe itself. It starts with I am. And that I am is pure, unadulterated. Pure consciousness of being. And as we start to come into the knowing of that I am, then as we're naming the conditioning and the programming and the thought processes, and we can get a little distance from them, we have a place to rest. We can rest in the peace of I am. That's who I am. And we will come to recognize that as love, unconditional, loving awareness. And we don't come to rest in the knowing of that and the knowing that we are that. We don't come to rest in that to avoid the suffering, the traumas, the wounding, the programming. We come to rest in our truth so that we can allow our illusions, our stories, our narratives, our anxieties, our feelings, our doubts, our uncertainties, our fears. We can allow all of that to arise into the presence of love. So we don't get so freaked out. We don't get so lost in the fear. We can know, oh wow, this fear that I feel is arising into the truth of my being, into the truth of love. I am the love. I am the unwavering and unconditional love of consciousness, of being, that stays shining bright. So as the fear arises, it is bathed in love, it is bathed in light, it is bathed in truth. Why do we suffer? Because we forget the truth of our being. Why do we suffer? Because we forget the truth of our being and we get lost in the suffering. When we are disconnected from our divinity, we will feel not enough. When we're disconnected from our divinity, we will feel not enough. Why do I feel not enough? Why do I feel small? Why do I feel fearful? Why do I feel so vulnerable and fragile? Oh, I have forgotten my wholeness. I have forgotten my truth. I have forgotten my divine nature. Because I have forgotten my practices and my meditations. I have forgotten to stay in these conscious conversations. I have forgotten to be a student of my whole dimensionality. I've gotten lost in all the distractions of life, and I have carved out no time for my stillness and my breath and my study and my remembrance. in my journaling that are all little wake-ups. Wait, remember truth, remember truth, remember truth, remember truth. Wake up. Oh, don't get lost in the dream. Come on, stay with me. Hang in there. JK, namaste from Toronto. Hello, JK. So, a practice that we do to help remember our truth is inquiry. To inquire into the nature of reality. What's happening? What's really happening? What are the components? What are the dynamics? What is the ego? What is the soul? What is source? Mostly we forget soul and source and we're just lost in our own minds, projections and narratives and stories. Now, one of the defenses that the ego will trot out, that the ego will deploy to keep you from diminishing its power, from putting it in its place. Look, we need an egoic identity. We need a sense of individuality, but not as our identity, but just as recognition that this is my shirt, and this is my mouth where the food goes, and this is my house that I live in, and I don't go wandering into the wrong houses. We need a sense of egoic identity, but not as who we are, but just as the vehicle, the recognition of the precious vehicle that gives expression and experience to the soul and to source. And where it gets tricky is the ego, who firmly believes it is you, will freak out if you say, no, you don't get to make the decisions any longer. It'll project a story, a belief that says, well, if I, who's really the only decision maker there is, am asked to no longer be making decisions based on my fears and lacks and protection and defenses, if I am being asked to no longer play that role, it believes that there would be nothing to motivate you. There would be nothing to inspire you. There would be nothing to move you. Because the only thing that's typically ever moved us, as if we're not awakening to our true nature, is the egoic perspective. That's what motivates. I need to do this to avoid being abandoned. I need to do this to make sure I'm loved. I need to do this to make sure that I stay emotionally safe. And that's what directs us and makes us choose this over that and make this decision and say yes to this and no to that. And it truly believes if that stops, what would be the motivating force? What would be the inspiration to do anything? And it turns out that desire does not only belong to ego. Desire is also a part of the soul. A natural desire, a natural inclination that isn't layered with the fears and the needs to protect and the needs to defend. When those are laid aside, there's pure desire, pure love, pure growth, pure inspiration. And we all know it. We all have inklings of this. a feeling of, oh, I just want to do this. But then the ego kicks in and says, no, but have you really looked at that? What if you fail at it? And then it trots out its stories. You'll be rejected, you'll be unloved, you will be unsuccessful, you will not be worthy, etc., etc. And when that is quieted, our soul is allowed to sing its song, to express, to choose this or that, to set a boundary, to say, no, this doesn't feel good to my soul's way of being, to my soul's desires and interests and motivations and inspirations. So the ego will tell us that without its participation in decision-making, that we would just be a blob sitting on the couch doing nothing. Why would I be inspired to do anything? And we start to recognize slowly at first, like a seedling starting to grow when you break up the concrete of the sidewalk above it, and the seedling will start to grow. Initially it's a sprout, but as it matures and grows and blossoms and becomes verdant, it is strong, it is clear, it is vibrant. But when we drop the ego attachments and narratives and directives, that true self doesn't just immediately blossom and flourish. It needs some time to be known, to be seen, to be accepted, to be abided, to be trusted, to have faith. And it'll grow, it'll blossom, it'll burgeon. And we find that we don't need our fears. We don't need all of our protections. We don't have to worry about not being loved, because we are love. There's the essence of being is love. How could I lose love? You don't have to worry about being judged, even by your own mind. You can witness that judgment and go, oh, that's just my mind doing its programming. I know who I am. This is the freedom, to know who you are, wholly. I'm a flawed human being who's got work to do, who's going to make mistakes and learn and grow and stumble and fall and get up and work through my egoic wounding. And I'm here for the curriculum of life, and I am the human being that's going to learn and grow and be confused and be afraid and have all the human experiences. I am that. I know that. That's where most people stop. And then to know also, and I am a beautiful, soulful expression of divine love. I'm an individuated, soulful expression that has a particular song and a particular voice and a particular way of being and a particular way of feeling and exploring, a particular grace. So I am that too. And I am the shared experience of all beings, the pure essence of loving awareness. So to know who I am is the freedom that we all seek. Okay, so there's a lot in there. But this is it. This is the journey. This is what it takes to wake up, is to stay in the conversations. In my own experience, and in the experience of everyone I work with directly, and even through the satsang and group and memberships, it's the same. We'll talk about a truth, and in the moment it's like, oh, yes, yes, I hear that, I get that. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, that's so helpful. Oh, this is relieving, liberating. This is nice to remember who I really am and to remember why I get so lost. And okay, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then maybe with a client, I'll be on the call with the client a week later, and they'll go, how do I get back again? I'm so lost again. And what I want to say is, come on, we just talked about it. We talked about it. We just do what we did remember last week when we did that meditation, or what we talked about? Like, just remember that. And the truth is, it's like I can't remember it. The ego's too strong. It's too loud. I need time. I need time and attendance and devotion and discipline and consistency to nourish the truth, that little seedling that is blossoming up through the broken down concrete. It needs time and nourishment. You can't stop watering it. You can't stop feeding it. You can't stop loving it. You can't stop shining light upon it in order for it to grow. So it takes time and devotion. And it's such a paradox and a conundrum. It takes such time to know who we already are. It takes such time to find what is already and always present within. It seems so silly, but that's the way it is. And I'm reminded of the Rumi poem that says, your task is not to seek for love. Your task is to seek for and find within you all the barriers you have built against it. And that's the naming. Find the barriers. Find your conditioning. Find your programming. Find your story. Find your narrative. Find your judgments. Find your beliefs. Find your wounding. And while you're doing that, this is where I disagree a little bit with Rumi, your task is also to seek for love. But not only to seek for love or only to seek for the barriers, but to come to know the essential grace and peace of being the love, so that as you attend to the barriers and find your own conditioning and wounding and pains and suffering and hurt and stories, that you can allow those to arise into the light of love, into the presence of who you really are. So I'll offer again into our experience here one of the most powerful inquiries I know for remembering the essential nature of being. So I invite you just to take a moment, close your eyes, bring your awareness to your breath. Notice the ease and movement of your own breath. Just as a way of quieting the mind a little bit. Just as a way of pointing your attention somewhere other than the constant chatter of mind. Just bring your awareness to your breath. And now I invite you to ask a question. It's called an inquiry. And play with this. Inquire, what if I did not have a story of me? What if I didn't have any constructed story of my worth or value or all the roles that I play? What if that was gone? Now, we're not asking you to pretend and imagine living like that. What we're asking is in this moment, sitting here, wherever you are sitting, in this moment, play with, in this moment, if my entire story of self disappeared, in this moment, if my entire history was gone, would I disappear? Imagine not touching anything from the past. Imagine not attending to anything in the future. Being so purely in this moment that you don't need a personal identity. You're not thinking about anything from the past. You're not projecting into the future. You're just present in this moment. What if you were present in this moment without any story of self? Would you disappear? And I think you will find that you would not. Sitting in this moment, you will find, no, that's wild. If I stopped all storytelling about me, I would still exist. There'd be something here. And you perhaps start to recognize the nature of the storytelling is fraught with all manner of beliefs and stories and agendas and ideas and opinions and judgments. And if all of that stopped, there would be a pure essence of simply being present. Oh, I still got my message on there. Welcome, we'll go live soon. Okay, just be in this presence. I exist prior to my stories, beyond my stories. There's an essential nature of being. And what is the nature of that being? What is the nature of that being? Of your being? Free of the weight and the density and the confusion of the dream of you that your mind has constructed. There is more to you than everything that your mind is narrating. There's more to life than everything your mind is narrating. Typically, what we're experiencing in the world is not the world itself. It is our thoughts and beliefs and opinions and judgments and projections about the world. When we relax the egoic construct of self, we can let the world come in and go directly into the heart, into the being of awareness. And then the soul can respond. Instead of the egoic stories responding, the egoic construct responding, when that's relaxed and we see it for what it is, and therefore we don't give it the power that it used to have, the world comes in and can be met by our soul's essence that is bathed in love, because the fabric of being is love. And we can simply stay in love and choose yes to this, no to that, yes to this, adjust this, change that, work with the world of form, move things around that are in alignment with my soul's desires and inclinations. But notice in all of that, the fear of the egoic, personal, individual self is relaxed. We learn to not give it power any longer. But how can we learn to not give the egoic story power if we're not accessing an essential nature of being that is who we really are? So this is the journey. Know thyself. Know all the parts of your full dimensionality. Who you really are, how your egoic story of self gets in the way. What is the egoic story of self made of? Does it have any substance? Is there any reality to it? Is it just thoughts and conjectures and ideas and database and neural firings? Constantly changing. Is that who I am? And then in our meditation, inquiring, is there a me beyond my thoughts? What if my thoughts all just slowed down? What if I pretend or imagine that I have no story? There is no individuality. I don't disappear. And what then actually starts to appear is peace. And we can come to rest in that peace of being in this lifetime. So, hopefully there was some resonance and something within you that said, "Ooh, yeah, ooh, that's helpful. That perspective shift, that remembering of my divine nature is helpful." And then your invitation is to marinate on that, is to keep coming back to that something, that spark of something within that went, "Ooh, that feels good. That feels right. That feels liberated. That feels like me. That feels like truth." And to journal about it, and to talk about it, and to go for a walk and feel into it and think about it and roll it around in your mind, in your heart, in your being. Be with it. Stay with anything that ignites you, anything that feels like it just woke you up for a second. And it's like a spark, and you need to keep breathing on it with journaling and contemplation and conversations and more study. You keep breathing on that spark of light, of truth, of grace. This is how enlightenment occurs, is to let there be a little bit of enlightenment and keep attending to it. So that spark turns into a fire that needs to keep getting fed, and that fire grows if it's fed, if it's attended to, with our studies and our attention and our meditations and our practices. And then to recognize this thing called enlightenment, it's not an extraordinary thing. It's simply knowing who you are. That's it. It's just, enlightenment is just living as who you actually are. What's actually extraordinary is to be so lost in the dream of the egoic identity that we completely forget our truth. That's extraordinary. Enlightenment is not an extraordinary thing. It's just the simple recognition of who you actually are. Beautiful. So I want to invite anyone to ask a question, to propose a thought, an inquiry. If you only have access to the chat, you can do that in chat. If you are logged into the Satsang through the Chrome browser, you can tap the little button that says, ask to engage in the conversation. So what do you notice? Where do you run up against a little bit of a barrier? Where do you get lost? Where is this journey of awakening as who you truly are get hazy? Because this is a study. It's a whole fresh perspective. It's like learning math, as you're learning equations and trigonometry, you're going to ask questions along the way. Wait a minute, how does x equal y again? Tell me, wait, how does this work? So it's the same thing. Just learning to understand the fabric of our own truth, the fabric of reality. To sit with this, just to be with. A stillness. And recognize just because the mind bubbles up thoughts, you don't have to go with them. You don't have to attend to every thought. You certainly don't have to believe every thought. You'll notice the mind just thinks things. It's infinitely creative. It's always creating thoughts and ideas and beliefs. Just because the mind thinks it or imagines it or creates it doesn't mean it has any substance. The inquiry that I offer is, as you go through your days and nights, through your waking hours, to get into the habit of asking, what is really happening right now? What is contributing to my sense of well-being? What is contributing to my current experience? Am I currently completely living in my own conditioned and programmed narrative? Have I forgotten who I really am? Wait, who am I really? What is the essence of consciousness, of being? Beyond my personal story? Ask yourself throughout your days, what's really happening? Keep breaking it down. What makes up my reality? Where do I get distracted? In what ways could I attend to a better understanding of what makes up my human spiritual experience? In what ways could I study or explore a greater sense of self, a greater sense of consciousness? If I've got an kind of a lingering or lasting or general sense of uncertainty or anxiety or fear, where's that coming from? What's its substance? And what if I were to allow that to arise into the presence of acceptance, of allowing, which is the nature of consciousness? You see, allowing is not an activity of mind. It's not a choice of mind. Allowing is the very nature of our being, of our truth. It is the wholeness of our being that doesn't worry about success or failure or being loved or not loved, accepted or not accepted. That's all the egoic construct of self that has those concerns. And not to say that the essence of consciousness and soul isn't going to desire to be successful and to make the most of this life and to know love and to know engagement and connection and acceptance. It's just not attached to it. It's not depending on all of that in order to be okay. The wholeness of our being is already okay. And then we try to make as good of a human life as we possibly can. And it's going to work out sometimes, and it's going to be a struggle at other times, and hard sometimes, and difficult, and challenging, and easy, and it's going to have all manner of different fluctuations. But the egoic identity is attached to, they have to turn out a certain way in order to know happiness, to know peace, to know love. It attaches happiness and peace and love to the conditions. But to know our essential nature of being is to know love, is to know wholeness, is to know undying peace. And knowing ourselves as that, we can rest as that peace as life fluctuates. Can you speak to opening your heart? Hey, Mark. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. Yes. The first step, if you will, in opening the heart is to quiet the mind. Like the heart, when we say the heart, it's also to understand opening the heart is opening the portal to life unfiltered by the conjectures of the mind. unfiltered by the judgments and beliefs of the mind. Opening the heart is to open the portal to the wholeness of being. To open the heart is to trust in what we find, we'll say, in the heart, just for language's sake. Trusting what we find in the heart. When we quiet the mind and drop the awareness into the heart, we start to find a glimmer of peace, a glimmer of ease, a glimmer of stillness. And one very, very important, critical dynamic of opening the heart is that when we find that glimmer of peace or that glimmer of kindness, that glimmer of ease, that glimmer of stillness, to name it as self. Oh, that's me. Oh, I'm not my thoughts and beliefs and conditioning and programming. When I drop out of that and I find a little sense of stillness and grace and love and peace, even a glimmer, to name it. Oh, there I am. Oh, I'm home again. Oh, that's me. This is not actually a passing experience. It's the me that is always there, awaiting attention, awaiting the awareness. Oh, that's me. Oh, that which I find in the heart is me. I am that which shines through the heart. Because it can't shine through the mind, full of its stories and cloudiness and noise. The truth of our being shines through the heart. The heart is just a portal opening. It's like a doorway that opens into the boundless nature of our being. Oh, I am that. Oh, I am that. Another way of opening the heart is the practice of not naming life. It's a nuanced practice. But it's being able to be in the world and notice things, situations, and just practice. What if you weren't naming them? What if you didn't name them tree, cat, couch, sunlight, nice, not nice, beautiful, not so beautiful, desired, not desired? What if you stopped all naming, all narration? And you would start to see things and be with things a little bit more directly, not filtering them through your ideas and thoughts and beliefs. You would just start to be with life without all the noise of narration. So it's a practice. It's especially easy when you come out of a meditation. To open your eyes and tell yourself, all right, I'm going to spend a few moments here noticing the activity of life without naming it, without narrating it. And what you're doing in that moment is you're easing your mind's typical activity. And when we do so, all we have left is heart. All we have left is being. So we open the heart by slowing down the mind, by quieting the mind's narration. And then when we find any semblance of ease, name it. Oh, there I am. Oh, that's the me that, quote, I have been seeking. And that's a whole other conversation about the I that is seeking, but for now. That's the me that has been sought. That ease, that peace, that grace, that little bit of stillness is actually me. There's the truth I'm looking for, right there. And you'll start to trust it more, and you'll start to have more faith in it, and you'll start to find its inherent joy and inherent peace. And that's how we learn to start to open the heart. Is to feel what's present through the heart and name it as self. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. It's a journey. And it requires devotion. It requires asking the question, what do you want? And when you get really clear, cutting to the chase, typically what we all want is to know peace. Some might say, I want to be free of, I'm always in my head. My mind won't shut up. And what it's typically saying is not helpful. I want to be free of all the unhelpfulness of my own mind, which is to say, I want to know peace. And if you want to know peace, then it's helpful to know that that is going to require patience and devotion and practice. And as you come to trust that peace, the mind will freak out. It will start screaming that you're not safe. It'll just start telling its stories louder. And you got to know that that's coming. You got to know that that's going to happen. So that as it does, you can notice it and witness it and go, wow, check out my mind. Wow. Whoo, man, it is going off today. And who's noticing the mind going off? I am. Consciousness. Awareness. It's the sky noticing the weather. And the sky is undisturbed by the weather. And if you're in the Oasis membership, the last monthly lesson speaks to this. About the blank canvas of consciousness upon which we paint our life experience. And the canvas is always scrolling, always appearing blank, 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 blank. Receptive, receptive, receptive. And we get to paint upon that. And everything we paint goes. Comes and goes, arises and passes, appears and disappears. And we get so enamored with all of our painting that we forget that we're painting upon this beautiful, receptive, blank, peaceful canvas of love. And that is who we are. We are not that which the mind paints. We are the receptive canvas of loving awareness and consciousness. upon which our soul can paint, if the mind is relegated to its proper position of being a strategist and a logistician and brilliant in all the ways that it's brilliant. But the mind is meant to assist the soul. So the soul can paint itself, its loves, its desires, its flavor, its song, its way of being, its journey upon the blank, abiding canvas of love. Then we get to be in the soul, what I call the soul God experience, the soul source experience of life, awakened as the soul source dance. And recognizing that all the egoic protestations are merely like incense smoke. They have no substance. They're there. In that regard, they're real, they're there, but they're not projecting reality. It's like a mirage. I can't say mirages don't exist, because they do, but I can definitely say that what they are projecting is not real. I can't say my mind's stories and narratives and beliefs and opinions and judgments aren't real. There they are. I don't want to deny that they exist, but I can at least see them for what they are. They are conjectures of mind. They are database. They are conditioned thought patterns. And I am not that. I am that which is aware of all of that. Thank you for that question, Mark. How can we open the heart? By coming to trust and know that what we find through the heart is self, is the true self. And naming all that clouds that knowing as activity of mind. No substance. To be the sky beyond the clouds. Another question, another thought, another inquiry. Feel free to chat. I'm really curious. Where do you bump up against a difficulty? Enlightenment, right? As that light of truth starts to grow brighter, as we start to recognize it more. And we're still going to be stumbling around in the dark. We're still going to be banging our shins against the furniture. So what are you banging your shins against? Right? And this is the curiosity. It's just infinite curiosity. Why am I lost? Why am I so stuck in these feelings? What's really happening? That's the question. To name it. Why? Oh, wow, I'm believing my own mind. I'm believing my own thoughts. I'm believing my database of conditioning. Well, what else is there? Oh, that's right, I did that meditation earlier, and I did find that there is a beingness, an essence of being beyond thought that exists independent of thought. Oh, that's what else is there. Oh, and I am that. Right. Okay. There are my thoughts that arise within the presence of awareness. Ah, right, okay. We got to keep, it's like a new language. How do you get fluent in a new language? You speak it regularly, regularly, regularly. You keep speaking it. Wait, how do I conjugate that verb again? Wait, how do I do future tense and past tense? Oh, that's right. That's how I do it. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's right. And we get fluent in a language. This is just getting fluent in our truth. We learn how to get fluent in our truth by attending to, naming all the different parts of the human spiritual dynamic. I assume opening the heart is the first spark in the journey. It can be. I know that in my experience and in the way I typically work with people, the first part of the journey is to name what you want, to name what is getting in the way, and then to get very, 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 very clear on who you are not. Because if we're not clear on who we're not, and all the ways that the egoic identity argues for itself, and what it's made up of, and how it operates, if we're not clear on that, then any spark we start to open up is going to be immediately questioned and quashed and dampened by a fearful ego. So we've got to get really clear on who we're not. It's like pulling back the curtain on the Wizard of Oz. This big, mighty wizard that is the all-knowing, all-being. And when you pull back the curtain, you realize it's just this scared little guy pulling a whole bunch of levers. And when you can see it for what it is, it loses its power. So then you, as you attend to the spark of your truth, you can hear the egoic protestations and go, wait, you can't be that. That's vulnerable. You're not defended. You're not protected. How are you going to get the love and the validation that you so desperately seek by being that? You can't do that. And the ego says, listen to me, listen to me, listen to me. So if the first step were to open that spark is to know that self, and you're not naming the illusion of your own identification, then that spark isn't going to last. It's going to get questioned. You're going to talk yourself out of it. On the other hand, if all you're doing is naming the untruth of yourself, and you're not awakening who you really are, if you're not awakening through that spark of knowing, that spark of heart, that spark of truth, of love, if you're not starting to awaken that and recognizing that that is the essence of your truth, if you're not doing that, then as you're saying, I am not the ego, I'm not the mind, I'm not the thoughts, I'm not the conditioning, well, it's hard just to let that go, because then who would you be? You'd be in limbo. There'd be nothing to catch you. There'd be no net. There'd be no truth to receive you. So it is a combination of both. Who are you really? That's the spark of knowing. And who are you not? Who is this self that is so insistent and frightened and scared and dominant and loud? And does that have any real substance? I think we're coming up on our time here. We have to recognize our own delusions for what they are. I use an analogy, the squirrel guy analogy. If you're walking through Central Park in New York on a beautiful spring day, and somebody who's delusional, who's lost in their own mind, a crazy guy, comes up and gets in your face. He goes, hey man, did you know? Squirrels, man, squirrels are taking over the world. Would you believe him? You wouldn't. Just because it's being said out of delusion doesn't mean you need to believe it. You wouldn't go, whoa, really? Squirrels? Oh my God, because I'm looking around, there's a lot of squirrels. Oh, we are so in trouble. Oh my God, look at all the squirrels. You're saying they're taking over the world? You wouldn't be walking with a friend and say, come here, check this guy. This guy's saying squirrels are taking over the world. You wouldn't listen to it. You would know it's delusion. We need to see our own delusions, our own stories, our own constructed belief systems based on what we were taught and how we were conditioned and how we were programmed to forget our truth, to not know our divine truth as love, to believe the only way we're ever going to get love is by being successful, by being worthy, by being valuable, by getting it right, by not making mistakes, etc. Those are all delusions. They're not true. So we've got to start treating our own egoic construct as a construct of conditioning. So it's both. Start to awaken who you are and be very clear on who you're not. One without the other won't work. And recognize that if you completely dissolved the sense of identity through the ego, you don't dissolve the ego completely, because then you'd be kind of a mess. You'd have no sense of individuality whatsoever, and you'd get in a lot of trouble out in the world. But you simply dissolve your identity as being solely the constructs of the egoic identity. And as you do, you will find that you will still be guided. You'll still be guided. You'll still be directed. How to move, where to go, what you like, what you don't like, what feels good, what feels resonant, what feels desirable. And you'll move in all these graceful, authentic ways, not attached to anything turning out any particular way, because your sense of love and peace and happiness is not dependent on the world behaving in any particular way. And from the soul's perspective, it's got all the time in the world. It just keeps adjusting and pivoting and moving and figuring out and moving through this life with grace, in peace, rested in peace. So may we all rest in peace today. Forever. Awake in this beautiful, wild world of form. All right, my friends. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Blessings, love, if you haven't joined the Oasis yet, I invite you. Just go to chessedwards.com, find the Oasis, and join us. There's beautiful lessons and studies and opportunities to stay in these conscious conversations of truth and love and grace. All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in a few weeks. May you rest in peace. Blessings.